colleagues, we are alive. Quickly come, Cross. Okay. Come.
Yeah, go.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon to all that have joined us through social media. We are here at Zambia Police Station, day 2 of the detention of our Patriotic Front Secretary General, Honorable Raphael Nakacinda. You are aware that he was arrested yesterday at Woodlands Police Station, given a charge of sedition over remarks he made over the poisoned meal that was being distributed to our people, which caused the death of over 400 dogs, and to date we don't know the number of people who could have died. So the police charged him with sedition over that matter. The police have been unable to grant Honorable Nakacinda bond, contrary to the numerous statements by President Hakainde Hichilema, who always says if someone is arrested, they should be arraigned and given bond or taken to court quickly. Today it's been over 24 hours. We are in the second day, and Honorable Nakacinda still doesn't have police bond. We have organized sureties, 2 members of parliament and 2 councillors, and Honorable Nakacinda still doesn't have police bond. I'm here with members of the Patriotic Front, led by senior members of Honorable Mtoto Kafwaya, MP for Lunte, who is a member of the Central Committee. I have Honorable Madam Sylvia Chalikosa, member of the Central Committee, former minister, and I have Professor Nkanduluo, who is also here. We will start with our Honorable Professor Nkanduluo. Your views, especially in light of the United Nations Commission on Human Rights Council's report of these arrests and harassment of the opposition.
So thank you very much, Ambassador Mwamba. For me, basically, as a woman in this country, what is happening in this country gives very, very sad reading. And sometimes I sit and wonder and say, what is happening to our country? Why would we be going through a process of revenge against each other? What are we building as a future of this country? Are we going to leave as a legacy for our children and our children's children? And I feel very, very sad. You can even see my demeanor. I'm extremely sad. But I think what is even more, as a health provider, when you look at the conditions that are prevailing, you just feel so sad that you can have somebody where the law provides that once somebody has sureties, they should be released and they should be subjected to conditions that are very detrimental to their health. So I can tell you that I am extremely sad. Sometimes I even have no words to say because of the kind of feeling that I have at this particular moment. In fact, this morning when I woke up, I had decided that maybe I shouldn't even come to visit. But being a human being, you feel, no, let me go and check on my colleague, because it's so sad and one doesn't want to just break down. It's sad. When we visited Honorable Chitotela and Honorable Chilangwa, we actually had to break down and cry. And one is asking, is this what it means to be a leader? That once you leave office, then you become incarcerated, you become an enemy of the country. I think Zambia should reflect on this, and hopefully those who will come into future leadership of this country need to reflect on what's going on in this country, and we must find a way of stopping it. So for me, I'm calling on all of us to reflect on the goings on that have been going on in this country for the past 3 years. Reflect and think about our children, our children's children. This is not the future Zambia wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mtoto Kafaya.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba. And I think to begin with, I would like to adopt the views that have been tendered by Honorable Professor Nkanduluo. I am touched by her words, but much more I'm touched by what is happening in our country. I think that this country deserves better. The Zambian people deserve a leadership that is able to solve the problems that they are contending with. The Zambian people continue asking the same questions. Who can solve our problems? Who can reduce the cost of living? Who can eliminate load shedding? Who can help us to live dignified lives? But what we see is that leadership just comes to destroy the Zambian people, just comes to hammer the already hammered Zambian people. And it's very unfortunate. Right now, Zambia Police is having to spend money to keep Honorable Nakacinda for an offense, an alleged offense that actually the Zambian government is refusing to be using against the opposition. The other day I read a report from one UN agency who claimed that the Zambia Police, or the Zambian government through the Zambia Police, is actually intimidating the opposition by the use of several offenses, including seditious practices. And I did hear from one agent of government refusing that actually the content of that report is untrue. But today, Honorable Nakacinda is there for the very offense that is contained in that report. So what are you refusing then as a government? Why are you denying that you aren't using this particular offense when in fact a day after your rebuttal you go on and arrest Secretary General of the largest opposition political party? I think that it's very, very unfortunate. But while you do this, I want you to remember, and by you I mean the Zambian government, that the Zambian people are suffering. And the Zambian people will not forget their suffering in 2026. And you are going to pay for all of these things that you are actually causing on the Zambian people. Instead of focusing on things that can help them, you are focusing on arresting Nakacinda, arresting this one, arresting this and that. It's very, very unfortunate. I hope that you can change your trajectory. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Chaliko, sir. You've been joined by a leader of the opposition in Parliament, Honorable Grant Munduvile, but you speak after Madam Chaliko, sir.
I came earlier to visit Honorable Nakacinda, and we were allowed to see him during lunch hour from 13 to 14 hours, and then we were told to leave afterwards and come back 16 hours. So this is the second time I'm coming to see Honorable Nakacinda, and what has disturbed me is that the current government, through the presidency of Hakainde Hichilema, used to condemn the very, very things that they are practicing now. And it's so hypocritical, this current government, to even appear like they are addressing the issues that are affecting the Zambian people, when in fact their concentration is just on persecution of opposition members, going beyond opposition members, the clergy, journalists, ordinary citizens, anybody who voices out against what the government is not doing, which it should be doing, which is addressing the high cost of living, amongst other issues. So I find it very, very disturbing that the number one agenda that this president HH has is to just annihilate the opposition. What do you gain? If the concentration was to be on development, I think a lot more Zambians would be much, much happier. But as it is, all we are seeing is just persecution, and the same people being the judge and the jury, and effecting arrests, possibly convictions as well. So when I was a young girl, I used to dream about becoming a member of parliament. I became a member of parliament, and my experience has been that once you leave office, you have nothing to show for the goods that you did, except to be persecuted. Whatever is happening to our colleagues can happen to anybody. So anybody who is thinking of joining politics has to think twice, because the current leadership is showing to all Zambians that being a public leader comes with its consequences. It should not be like that. While a lot of Zambians may be celebrating, saying that we are getting what we deserve, which is not true, they have to think about, if it's not us today, it will be somebody else tomorrow. So as a country, we need to be above personal issues and look at the country. We've lost credibility in the region, we've lost credibility on the continent, and we've lost credibility internationally as a country because of the misdeeds of the current government. How are we going to correct that? All Zambians must look at this issue as something that affects each and every one of us. It's not just members of PF, members of other political parties, it's all Zambians. So we can only appeal to everybody to take an interest in civic activities and speak. It's not always going to be the politicians alone that will speak against such injustice. We all need to be above this, because unless we all get involved, this thing will not stop. It will go to the next level, and before you know it, even those who are not affected will become affected. It's a very, very sad state of affairs. I hope that something will be done to put a stop to all this.
Thank you very much. Leader of the opposition, Honorable Brown Mundu.
Thank you very much, Chairman Communication. You see, Chair, I'm in the habit of taking notes of my daily activities. So before I came, I went to my diary, and I discovered that we've had visitations to the police stations over 50 times the past 3 years. That's the number of times our people have been incarcerated. And I may be quoting from the US ambassador's words, where he said, if you want to see your leaders' priorities, see where they put much of their efforts. So the UPND government, clearly, much of the effort has gone towards intimidation and persecution of opposition political leaders, as it were. If you look at what is happening today, the headlines in newspapers are not graced with developmental programs that will benefit the citizens. If you open a newspaper, it's Mwamba arrested, Nakacinda detained, Chilangwa convicted. That's all that you've seen the past 3 years. Now, if you compare what is happening now with what happened in the past was totally different. There's a groundbreaking ceremony. President Lungu is commissioning the bottom road, the Chingola Solwezi Road, or Kazungula Bridge, or is commissioning works at Lusaka International Airport, or Livingston Airport, or there's a water dam, Kafulafuta Dam. That is what graced our headlines. Now, when you look at the two, you realize that the PF and President Lungu prioritized developmental programs. That is why that was what was gracing our headlines in the past. But today, the priority of President Nakacinda is to intimidate opposition political leaders. And the reason is simple. The UPND government, our UPND leaders had no plan for this country. They never thought about governing this country. So what their plan now is to oppress and suppress the opposing voice, so that there's nothing else for people to compare with, as it were. But Zambians are not stupid. Zambians can compare the 3 years of the UPND in government and the 3 years of the PF in government, as it were. You find that the very offenses for which they are picking our people today are the same offenses for which they are compensating their people. Exactly. Then you would wonder, because if this had happened to a UPND cadre previously, a UPND member, today they are being paid millions of kwacha for having been detained under these circumstances. Whilst on the other hand, they are doing the same to our members, as it were. I'm very happy, Chairman, Communication, that we've been vindicated by the UN report. The UN report vindicates us, because when we spoke previously about the intimidation, the constraints on the democratic space in the country, people thought it was mere politicking. But these are experts that have got presence in Zambia. They are not only doing desk reports, as it were, they've actually got people on the ground that have been there to verify. So as it is now, as a country, we are an embarrassment to the international community. Whilst we are going through so many problems, ranging from load shedding, poisoned mealie meal, poisoned maize, lack of food, as it were, all that people can read about Zambia is the oppression and the persecution of our political leaders. Our call to the president is that he must sit for a moment and just reflect. How can he put on the lens of an ordinary Zambian to try and understand how he is viewed as a leader, how his government is viewed? The PF government that he condemned so much actually performed 1,000 times better, as it were. Because whilst he spoke and condemned everything that they did, the people on the ground were able to appreciate. Because President Edgar Chagwa ensured that when we had drought in 2015, he realized that the small businesses like barber shops, saloons, workshops and so on were going to suffer. He went out of the way and ensured that he imported power. And imported power expensively. That is to the extent to which he could go to save the lives of the Zambian people. Running a country is not like running a business where you have to post profit. You become so sensitive to the margins, the costs, and the benefit, as it were. A governance would speak to what we call social profits. The social profit is to be able to save lives in hospitals by supplying them with power. What does it pay a country to try and save money, fail to import power because you feel power is expensive, and yet people are dying in hospitals? We've got reports of people who are dying on hospital beds, not because they're supposed to die, but because there's no power. What will it pay a country for all the welders in all these markets, including challenger markets, closing up shop? They have no jobs. They were encouraged to start small economic activities. Now they can't trade because there's no power. I was doing my calculations. 3 hours of power per day translates to only 3 days of power in 30 days. So that's how, what responsible government can honestly do that? You do that, there's no announcement whatsoever. There's no position taken from the head of state himself to try and see how to save this country. And yet, they expect ZRA to go out there and collect taxes. Taxes from where? The businesses are closing every other day. Yeah, so it's very unfortunate that our youths have been abandoned. These are the same youths that President Nakacinda promised. He said, just shout Bali, Chijob Muliwe. He later changed and said, no, you are lazy, start your small businesses. The young people went out of their way. They went and accessed loans and got some grants and started a business. But that business can't run today. I will take advantage of that to immediately call upon the president that all the youths that got loans through CDF must be forgiven. Those debts must be forgiven. It will be unfair for the president or the government to expect the youths to repay these loans, yet the businesses have been killed. So my call to the UPND government is that all those youths who accessed loans through CDF between 2021 to date should have their loans cancelled. It will not make sense to expect these youths to pay these loans, as it were. They are the same loans that they had used to buy equipment which is not working today. Some of them, because of surges, they've actually lost their equipment, as it were. So it's indeed very, very unfortunate that Comrade Nakacinda has to go through this time and again. Comrade Mwamba is facing similar charges, as it were. He is fortunate that he's still out here to speak to the public, as it was. So President Nakacinda, what the Zambian people want is not to see us taking interviews at police stations. We should be taking these interviews in front of a road that is about to be commissioned. We should be taking these interviews because some airport is about to be done. Some hospitals are about to be built, as it were. Some dams are being created. We haven't heard anything about the UPND policies to do with the revised policies in agriculture. They came in with what they call the Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program, CASIP. The Minister of Agriculture doesn't even understand what that is. We asked him in Parliament, can you explain how different this CASIP is from what we've been doing? So what we expect to hear from the UPND government going forward, can we know what plans they have in the agriculture sector? Can we know what plans they have in the energy sector? Can we know what they have to do with infrastructure projects, as it were? Otherwise, it's unfortunate, but I'm very, very happy, Chairman Communication, that the UN report indicates us. What we've been talking about is what is captured in that particular report upon their expert findings, as it were. So it's really sad that we're going through this as a country.
You can rush to see our brothers who leave us.
Thank you.
Before they exclude you. And then, yeah, please.
In fact, I was going to even ask, how can a utility company, a parastatal like Zesco, be advising people to invest in alternative energy when it's their core function to provide energy and provide power to the country? The Zambian government should be interested in investing in Zesco so that they look at the alternative energy and provide that at an affordable cost to the members of, the Zambian people. So it is most unfortunate. We are dealing with 3-4 days, sometimes 5 days of no power. How can anyone survive? Your fridges don't work, your freezers don't work, your food gets rotten. It's a very, very bad and very embarrassing situation. So the government must think of proper investment into the energy sector.
Thank you very much. Just speaking briefly to the UN report. The UN report, especially under the Human Rights Council, those special rapporteurs. The special rapporteurs were created for issues like this, where they are rapid, where human rights abuses and human life is at stake. Last month there was a report about Rwanda condemning President Kagame and his role in the war in the DRC. That is the purpose of those special rapporteurs. You've seen the recent reports about Sudan, wherever human rights are threatened. There's even been special reports against Russia over Ukraine. For Zambia to be listed amongst, to have a special report out of 193 countries, for the month of September it was Zambia that has been cited, is really a sad day for ourselves as a country. Received a report they have. They had no choice. We need to remind Zambians that the Zambia multi-party state when he attacked through a proxy, the Patriotic Front. So it is our local institution that raised that issue. Last followed. 12 NGOs led by NGOCC and Chapter 1 Foundation also raised similar concerns. Then the Church, Christian Council of Zambia and the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia all talked about the harassment of the opposition, the issues of torture, and the abandoning of the issues of development to focus on destroying the opposition. They've all spoken about it. The UN is just like cream on this issue. They've just affirmed what the local entities have said. So when government denies the UN report, where were they when the church raised these matters? Where were they when Laz raised these matters? Where were they when the 12 NGOs raised these matters? Government must simply own up and promise remedy, because this has damaged us, like Ambassador said. Ambassador Sylvia Chalikosa, although she was a minister, she was also an ambassador. So she knows what she's talking about. Today we are afraid to be at SADC meetings.
Yes.
Now you have reports from the UN against us. See how far we have sunk as a country. Were these the international aspirations of Dr. Kaunda? No, not at all. You cannot celebrate Zambia's 60th independence anniversary, a diamond jubilee, under this cloud of oppression, of harassment, and of hunger. 6.8 million people face hunger in this country.
In fact, Zambians should go.
And you have power being supplied by ZESCO 3 days in a month, because they've said they'll be supplying only 3 hours a day. So if you calculate the 3 hours by 30, it's just giving you 3 days in a month. You can't not have a country like this. In fact, probably the president should have even reconsidered his trip to China for the FOCAC meeting, owing to the various crises that the country is facing. This government would not have pushed the arrest of Nakacinda with a UN report hanging over their head. But as if to affirm the details of the report, they proceeded to arrest Honorable Raphael Nakacinda. So Zambians, as who keep on giving you updates, it's the second day of Nakacinda's detention, going into the third day, because looking at the time, they will clearly not give him bond and they will not release him today. So thank you. We'll give you an update much later.